Herron, Senator Stewart, Senator Kidder, and Senator Kyles. Senator Herron, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of you read at some point in school the famous novel 1984 by George Orwell. My son John and I were talking about that this afternoon. You may recall that in that novel, like in this legislation, a manual was created. And that manual helped explain and define doublethink. Doublethink is the holding of two contradictory beliefs simultaneously and believing both of them. And among the maxims were war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, and perhaps to those maxims now we can add that we should pass this legislation because we should not stifle teacher input, or that because one group cannot represent every group and every individual, no teacher should represent them. This legislation is titled the Advancement of Student Achievement Act. It might better be called the Advancement of Teacher Oppression Act. Nothing that I see in this legislation advances students. Nothing whatsoever. Now, some say the bill is not an attack upon teachers, but those who say that are not the teachers who feel the attack. The teachers whose voices will be stifled, suppressed, and prohibited from speaking on important issues that affect our children and affect those teachers who seek to serve our children. This legislation is more big government in Nashville telling school boards all over the state what they should do and what they will not be allowed to do. It's more big brother, more big government. It prohibits school boards, it prohibits teachers from working together in ways that they have for over 3 decades. This bill, and the gentleman recognized this, I appreciate Senator Falk from pointing out and getting us back on track. This bill has a number of things it prohibits teachers from working with school boards on. Prohibits school boards and teachers from working on pay plans, incentive compensation, spending grants and awards, evaluating teachers, staffing decisions, personnel decisions, and assignments, and anything that is called, quote, innovative, end of quote. That is a pretty large list of things to stifle teachers' voices on, things that affect the children of some of us in this room. It dictates to local school boards what they have to create, when they have to create it, and what they have to do with it. My home county school board was asked about this legislation. And the chairman wrote, and I quote, that the board and the teachers, quote, sit down around a table and work for what is best for our students and system personnel. He said, and I quote, this process has worked very well for both the board and the teacher group. I strongly believe that this process provides the teachers with a sense of being involved in helping shape what is happening in Weakley County schools. We as a board need that kind of input that those actually in the schools working with children can provide. We as a board aren't always capable of seeing everything that needs to be done. I would respectfully suggest that you vote against this bill. Do you remember when President Reagan called out for them to tear down the wall in Berlin? Well, this bill does the opposite. This bill builds a wall between the teachers and the school boards and those who've been working together. This bill prevents there from being representation. This bill is anti-free speech, anti-democratic, and anti-representative government. I wonder who these terrible teachers are that are so big and ugly and nasty. You'd think the teachers were all as big as Titan linemen, or at least ball linemen. 6'6", 300 pounds, mean, ugly, terrible folks, beating these poor little school board members into submission, flailing to death. You know, most of the teachers I know are like Senator Findy's mother, Amy. She's almost 5 foot tall and 100 pounds, maybe. Taught for 30 years. Teachers I know are like my dear colleague here, Senator Stewart's wife, Judy, who's taught for 18 years, his mother, who's taught 35 years, my sister, a Southern Belle, if ever there was one, who taught for 30 years, mostly special ed and mostly poor kids. You'd think the public schools were godless pagan places run by those who are out to corrupt our youth. And the public school teachers my boys had are like Miss Sherry, who teaches Sunday school with my wife. Ms. Mowbray, who sings in our choir, and I see every Sunday. Like Debbie Plumley, who taught my son John and my son Ben, and also goes to our church. Sarah Ann Pentecost, who helps lead the work in our church every time somebody passes and family needs help, who taught Tennessee history. Those are the folks I know that are teachers. God-fearing, devout women. And you know, ladies and gentlemen, and especially I would invite those of us who are gentlemen to consider this, 82% of the teachers in the largest professional organization for teachers in this state, 82% of them are women. 8 out of 10. Interestingly enough, about 8 out of the 10 school board members in my district are not women. And I can't figure out yet what it is we're afraid that these 5 foot and 5'4" women are going to do to take advantage of these big, tough businessmen who are running these school boards. What are we scared of? Is it the danger that the teachers will make too much money? Fiscal note says we pass this bill, it'll save us money. We won't pay teachers as much. Is that what we're worried about? Right now, Tennessee ranks 46th in the country in what we spend per student. Do you think if we pass this bill we can get to 50th? We can do less for our children than any other state? Right now, teachers in the districts of Senator Bell and the 2 gentlemen from Hamilton, those teachers, 700 and 800 of those teachers drive to Georgia every day to teach and make $7,000 or $8,000 a year more. Are we afraid we won't export our best teachers if we go ahead and pay them more? You know, you look around, and those people that are graduating and going into teaching now make about 40% less than a number of other professionals with 4-year degrees. If we pass this bill, can we get that up to 50 or 60% less? Will anything in that advance the students by paying teachers less? These big bad teachers organizations that we're concerned about, those teachers hadn't had a raise in 4 years. We're going to give them 1.6% this year. They'll be making almost 0.4% more per year for the last 4 years. Meanwhile, their health insurance and everything else goes up. Their paychecks shrink and shrink. And we fall further behind in the competition for the teachers that our students need. Are we afraid of the professional association that helped us win $500 million from the federal government? And this bill now will prohibit those teachers from having any say in how those funds are spent. Specifically prohibits negotiations on that. School boards talking with teachers about how those funds are spent. Is that how we reward the teachers who stepped up just a very few months ago? Is the danger that the professional organization, we call them a union. I hear my friend from Williamson wear the word out. He calls them a union. They call themselves a professional association. You know, we've got members on this floor that are members of the insurance union, insurance agents union, lawyers union, healthcare professional unions. Our speaker is in the Hall of Fame of the Auctioneers Union, and we're proud of him because he's a great auctioneer and a great speaker. Is there something wrong with being part of a professional association? Just like almost every member in this chamber is a member of some professional association? Well, these teachers are taking government money. You say that's different. Is it? Is it different than what the road builders do when they take billions to pave our public roads? Is it different than what insurance agents do when they contract with cities and counties all over this state? Is it different than what HCA or CCA does, what TEA does? There are a whole lot of folks taking government money. That's not the difference. You say, well, these teachers' associations, they're different. They're a different union. They can strike, but they can't. The law already prohibits them from striking. This isn't like when Ronald Reagan headed up the actors union and they could strike. These teachers don't have that power. Some unions can force businesses into binding arbitration. Not these teachers. Law doesn't allow it. Some unions can reach an agreement and that's it, but not with teachers. Because even if the school boards and the teachers reach an agreement, ladies and gentlemen, the county commissions don't have to fund it. By law, teachers are prohibited from striking. By law now, teachers are forbidden from binding arbitration. By law, even if they reach an agreement with the school board, the county commission can override and refuse to fund it. The Teachers Association, or whoever represents the teachers in your counties, they have the lawful power to sit down and talk and communicate and to try to make things better in education. And we want to take even that away from them. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1989, in his farewell address, President Reagan said, "Whatever else history may say about me when I'm gone, I hope it will record that I appealed to your best hopes, not your worst fears." And unfortunately, this bill appeals to our worst fears and not our best hopes. There are things we need to do in education, and all of them revolve around good quality teachers. I heard the speaker last week, I heard the governor last week talk about how important the classroom teacher is. And they're absolutely right. I agree with the speaker and I agree with the governor. And I would tell you, for the life of me, I cannot see how taking away teachers' voices on important issues encourages people to go into teaching. Maybe, and I'm sure this bill is not intended by some to be an attack on teachers, but I have yet to talk with a teacher who does not feel attacked by this legislation, by the attempt to stifle them and muzzle them and make them mute on issues that impact them and those children they serve. Now, I realize most of us in this room don't have a child in a public school. I realize the vast majority of those who will probably vote for this legislation don't have a child in the public school. But I would tell you, I've had 3 and I still have 1. And there's some great teachers who've made a difference in their lives. Nothing in this legislation, nothing by muzzling those teachers will make those schools better. Nothing will help my children or any of the other children in the public schools of Tennessee. I urge you not to appeal to our worst fears. I urge you to vote for our best hopes. Don't seek to muzzle our teachers and stifle them. Let them speak for our children and let them lead in education. It'll be best for our children. It'll be best for Tennessee. It'll be best for our future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.